Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story. It's June the 7th and we're in Proverbs 14. I'm back with Tyler Bream today and we're going to discuss this chapter of Proverbs, which is kind of a contrast. It says, if you have this or you have this, and compares the two together. I'll read the first 4 verses and we'll talk about a couple of those. It says, a wise woman builds her home, but a foolish woman tears it down with her own hands. Those who follow the right path fear the Lord. Those who take the wrong path despise him. A fool's proud talk becomes a rod that beats him, but the words of the wise keep them safe. Without oxen, a stable stays clean, but you need a strong ox for a large harvest. So he begins by talking about a wise woman benefits her home. A foolish woman tears it down with her own hands. What are some of the challenges of a foolish spouse? So I know how the Bible is written. You can't put it all on one party. What are some of the challenges of a foolish spouse, and what are some of the benefits of a wise spouse?
So having a wise spouse gives me clear insight into the first part of this verse and very poor insight into the second part. But I think the big idea here is a wise spouse will make the home a better place, right? Builds the home for everybody's benefit, particularly everybody else's benefit. But a foolish spouse will end up tearing it apart because they want to be in charge, they want to be right, they want to have their way. Right, one builds up, the other one always disintegrates and pulls it apart, whether they're pitting kids against each other or causing problems in the marriage or whatever.
Do you think that typically when a couple is dating, that is one of the check marks on their list? Are they wise?
It's been so long since I dated, I can't remember. No, I don't think so. Well, it should be. I don't think it often is, because if you're young and you're dating, you're not wise enough to know what wisdom usually looks
right.
like. I think to some effect, it's a luck of the draw, whether you end up dating and marrying a wise person.
Yeah, I think our homes in general, and I don't think he's just specifically talking about physical.
No.
Structures. I think we're either making our family a unit a better place, or we're slowly picking it apart and destroying it. And I think the danger when we read something like that is that we automatically think of the wrecking ball kind of things. Mm-hmm. But he says they tear it down with their hands, mm-hmm. which is like piece by piece.
Yeah.
The most painful deaths are those to see families die piece by piece. Mm-hmm. You understand when some major catastrophe, breach of trust happens, but when there's just no communication, no romance, no desire to help the other be successful, man, it just comes apart piece by piece. I think it's a real challenge.
Well, and in our modern world, we expect things to happen really, really fast, right? We have a drive-through mentality, but building a home in the ancient world, if it was a substantial home, and we're talking about Solomon here, so it was a big temple, it took him 10 years or so to build his palace. It was a long process. You either spend a long time building or you spend a long time tearing it down. It doesn't happen in one day.
Right. So verse 4 says, without oxen, a stable stays clean, but you need a strong ox for a large harvest. The question I had written down is, should we expect there to be a certain amount of inconvenience if there's going to be progress?
I think we shouldn't just expect it. It seems to say we should embrace it. The idea is you can have one or two things, right? You can either have a clean barn without manure, or you can have a full harvest, but you can't have both. And so if you want the full harvest, if you want the large harvest, then you've got to embrace the thing that gets you there. And that thing is going to come with problems.
Right. And, I hear in the context of churches say we want to grow. Mm-hmm. and we want children. Our church needs to get younger. Then you introduce children into the context, and it becomes a messy barn, you know. And they're like, well, we didn't want it this way. You know, we want the clean barn, and we want progress, which is usually not tenable.
And when I work with businesses, you know, I hear, we want to achieve this result. And I say, great, well, these are the processes and these are the tools you have to have. And they're like, well, we would prefer not to have to go through the pain of change or development. It's like, well, you can't have both. You can have what you have today, or you can build to something better and embrace the difficult elements that requires.
Yeah, it's just like simple construction. It is extremely messy before it is finished. You know, we want the end result. We don't want the work that goes in between. So verse 9, we can't cover all these verses because most of this chapter is totally independent. Each verse is. It says, fools make fun of guilt, but the godly acknowledge it and seek reconciliation. I would insert a different word, conviction or something there, you know, whatever. How do you see foolish people and wise people differently responding to conviction or guilt or conscience?
Yeah, I mean, whenever that happens, and we have to face it individually or we see it in other people, when they're confronted with the fact that they're in the wrong, how do you respond? Do you double down, try to work your way out of it, like David did when, you know, with Bathsheba? Do you double down and get Uriah killed and try to solve it that way, or do you respond like he did after Nathan confronted him and, you know, with Psalm 51? That's the difference between somebody who's acting foolish and acting wise. Is how do you respond in that moment when you actually do finally realize you are in the wrong? Wise people have the humbleness to say, okay, I was wrong, let me back up and let me start over, let me make amends, let me do what I need to do. But foolish people oftentimes end up doubling down or placing the blame somewhere else or
pointing a finger, yeah, which is extremely unfortunate. Verse 12 says, there is a path before each person that seems right, but it ends in death. Why would a path that seems right lead to death? I mean, tell me, this is an odd proverb to me.
To me, the interesting about this proverb is it has nothing, God's nowhere in that path. There's a path that seems right. That is, under my own approach, with my own limited perspective, what I want to do seems right. And the idea is, we all have sometimes I call it the lizard brain or the dumb brain, right? There's the wise path, which wisdom comes from God, so he will direct our way. And then there's our own path, which is foolish and dumb. The idea is, if we only do what we think is right without relying on God's wisdom, it will end in our own death.
Yeah. And I think that there are directions that do seem plausible, but if they're absent of God or what he wants, it can be extremely...
Which is the hardest thing. When something makes sense objectively, or we write a pros and cons list, and we look at it, and it on its own looks good. That's the hardest thing to overcome.
Yeah, that's not clearly wrong. Yeah. I think the clearly wrong ones are much easier than the ones that are just not the right choice. So verse 13 says, laughter can conceal a heavy heart, but when laughter ends, the grief remains. Do you think people use laughter as a mask? And should we be aware that people that are smiling are not always happy?
I mean, laughter and deflection and all of those tools. I think we use all kinds of tools. Laughter here, but similar in many other ways to deflection and small talk. We use those tools to deflect from what's really going on, you know, and we should be more aware. And I think the idea is, if we were more aware of other people, we actually paid attention to them far in a closer way, we would probably see beyond the laughter. Because you can, if you're attentive, you can tell when a laugh is real and when it's forced, or when the small talk is there to conceal something. Usually, though, at least in my instance, I'm too busy to care if I see it at all.
Yeah, you may care, but you're so busy you don't catch it. You know, it passes, and you take laughter for its face value instead of the mask.
Somebody else can deal with that.
Right.
I don't have to.
So verse 20 and 21 says, "The poor are despised even by their neighbors, while the rich have many friends. It is a sin to belittle one's neighbor. Blessed are those who help the poor." I'm trying to think about the best way to ask this. Maybe the only way I know to ask it is, why do you believe people are so reluctant to help poor people?
That's a good question. That's a tough question. I think we have this narrative in our minds about rich people versus poor people that oversimplifies things. Poor people are poor because they've done something wrong or make bad choices, and we justify the way that we don't help them. But we can, if a wealthy person or an influential person helps us, well, they've made the right choices, they do the right things if I help them. And I think ultimately it's a selfish thing. We want to help people who can help us in return. Whereas if somebody's really, if there's poverty or whatever sort of way they're on the edge of society, you're helping them, and you can't count on getting anything back. And I think we're selfish in that way. I think that's what drives a lot of it.
Yeah, this could be compiled with lots of other passages, about the necessity of helping the poor and how we're blessed if we do it. But I think some of it is personal selfishness. I think some of it is the fact that we don't even put ourselves in places to see needs. We're so consumed with our own life that we don't run in circles with people who have different needs than we do, and so we are completely oblivious to that, and we're looking for that next step up. So we're looking for the people who are ahead of us, and how can they help me, not how can I help the people behind me. And I think that here in Proverbs, in multiple places, throughout all of Scripture, we are challenged to pay attention to the poor. And not just necessarily because the previous verse talked about those who have a grieving heart, not just those who are poor financially, but they may be poor in spirit. They may have insufficient means to meet whatever needs they have, not just financially, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and we have to be aware of those people. So verse 28 says, "A growing population is a king's glory. A prince without subjects has nothing." Do we put way too much emphasis on numerical growth? And I don't mean just in the church, but I have more money, I have more status, I have more influence, I have more followers, whatever, than we do on...
More Facebook friends.
Right.
Yes, I think we do, because you can apply this to the church or a business or a life, but what happens is growth is a sign of other things. It's a symptom usually. It's a benefit. It's a way to analyze how you're doing. But then growth becomes the goal in of itself. And I think that's the problem. Growth is good, and growth is important because growth is a sign that you're doing the right things. The problem is when you get offset and the growth is the goal. And so you'll do whatever it takes to get that next follower, to get that reach through that next goal.
Right. We would have discussed on the podcast and preached a sermon about David taking a census. Well, censuses, I guess is the right word.
Yeah.
I don't think it's censi. Censuses are not off limits in the Bible. We have a whole book of the Bible called Numbers, which is basically a giant census. You know, Solomon is later going to take a census. They were constantly counting. David even counted people from time to time when he was dividing them up. But that one particular time, he is punished by God because he has come to depend on the census instead of depending on God.
And it's an arrogant thing.
Right.
I'm going to take a census because I want to see just how good I'm doing.
That's right.
Which the heart of it, I think that drives so much of this. The heart of what you're trying to get at is really important.
Yeah. So verse 29 says, people with understanding control their anger. A hot temper shows great foolishness. What are some of the challenges to controlling our temper?
Saying things that we can't put back in our mouth. I have done that so many times. The minute something comes out, all I want to do is take the words and just stuff them back in my mouth, because the moment they're out, I can't put them back, whether it's to my wife or to my kids or to somebody else. And that's one of the things that I reflect on more than almost anything else, is not responding quickly. If you're forced to respond quickly, or you tend to respond quickly, so often you're going to rue those words that you say, whether it's sending an email too quickly or responding in an argument or whatever. Silence is really valuable. Even a few seconds to sort of gather and stop and really consider what you're going to say.
Yeah, in a book we're reading with the staff, there's in one of the profiles about Abraham Lincoln, I think in the 20th century, they discovered bunch of his letters that he had written, and on the bottom of them he would write never signed, never sent, and he kept them. Like he would get it off his chest, but he wouldn't get it off his chest to those people, because the anger would only make things worse and not better.
Yeah.
So one more verse, and this we probably could dedicate an entire podcast to this. Verse 34 says, godliness makes a nation great, but sin is a disgrace to any people. It would be popular for people to use terminology like a Christian nation, which I'm of the opinion that a nation can't be saved. However, this talks about, the Bible does make mention of godly nations. You know, it can't mean that all the people are godly. So how is a nation godly?
Man, this is trying to step around the landmines.
The whole verse is a landmine.
What's interesting is it doesn't say a godly nation. It says godliness makes a nation great. So the godliness of the people in a nation, I think, can have a real profound influence on the nation itself. I agree with you. Nations themselves, a nation doesn't bow to Christ. People in that nation bow to Christ. Nations are things that we make up to organize ourselves.
Right.
So godliness, people who live lives defined by godliness, I think do make that great. I think of, for example, Jeremiah telling the Israelites as they were carted off in the Babylonian exile to pray for the Babylonians and contribute to that society while you're there. Make sure that place is better because you are there, and in that way you can be godly. And Babylon then is made a better place because people choose to be godly within Babylon. Whereas when those same people turn around and act as a sinful group within that nation, then the sinfulness only compounds.
Yeah, it wasn't. We think in terms of laws make a godly nation. But in Scripture, the law was a law. What made the nation godly was whether the people followed God or not. When they turned away from God, it wasn't that they got an ungodly law or a godly law that made them godly. It was their own personal habits, lives, worship, direction, prayer, where was it directed? And when the godly were living godly lives, the nation reaped the benefits of it. So good. Do you mind closing us in prayer?
Sure. Heavenly Father, thank you for the book of Proverbs. Thank you that you put on Solomon's heart to write this book of these Proverbs, and that you kept them, and we are able to study them today. I pray for everybody who listens to this or watches this, that they glean something that they can take with them. I pray that you, as we read through Proverbs, and as we put these into our heart and our mind, that you make them stick and land solidly in our hearts and on our minds, so that they do what Solomon intended they do, and guide and change how we live our lives, so that we can be godlier people, we can make godlier decisions, and have a godlier way and a path in our life. As we go about the day, I pray that you just bless the people who listen and watch this in Jesus' name.